I often get asked how to mediate a conflict between employees. If you've ever had members of your team stuck in conflict come to you to be a referee or to render a verdict, and you've balked, this video is for you. Alternately, if you ever watched helplessly as internecine warfare between members of your team hurts morale, delays projects, and results in sabotage, well, then this video is also for you. In this video, I'll offer questions to ask as you assess whether you should agree to mediate a dispute between your employees, and then I'll give you a roadmap for how you might conduct the mediation should you decide it's the right decision. And if you watch till the end, I'll offer advice for what to do if the mediation effort you undertake fails.
Congratulations on your epic fail!
Just because your employees are asking you to intervene in their dispute and to mediate doesn't mean that it's a good idea or your job to do so. Part of your job as a manager may well involve helping your team navigate conflict effectively, but that doesn't necessarily mean mediating their conflicts. Nor does it necessarily mean coming in from on high and rendering a decision. In fact, if you jump into the fray too quickly and without assessing the situation carefully, any intervention can backfire for you and for the team.
How is it not your fault? This is all your fault.
So, the first thing you want to do is assess the situation. This probably means setting up a private meeting with all the parties to understand their perspective on the situation and what is most important to them. In this meeting, it's important to be empathic and to ask lots of open-ended questions. But if you are the boss or supervisor, avoid taking a side. Instead, be clear about your purpose, which at this early stage should be to gather information and to understand the employees' perspectives and their interests, not to take sides and not to render a verdict. As part of your meeting, ask whether the employee has tried to resolve the situation on their own. If not, you might encourage them to do so, and if yes, you might ask what did they try and how did it go.
How was it? Oh, I don't know.
Before jumping into Mediate, it's worth trying what I call conflict coaching. The more you can empower your employees to resolve conflicts on their own, the better it is for them, for you, and for your team. But let's say the employees have tried to work it out and it's failed. Or alternatively, perhaps you've decided that having them talk with each other more will only make things worse. Then the next step is to consider whether you can be a good mediator for the situation. Some of the questions I'd invite you to ask are, first, can I be fair and impartial to both sides? Second, will I be seen as fair and impartial to both sides? Notice how these two questions deserve individual attention. Even if you feel like you can be fair and impartial, if you think that, given your relationship with the parties and your past history, that one or both might see you as being biased, it's really not a good call for you to be the mediator here. A third question to ask yourself, even if you determine that you can be and would be seen as fair and impartial, is, do you have the skills, the temperament, and the time to serve in a mediator role here? It's important to ask this question because I can tell you there are two ways that I've gotten work as a mediator in employment disputes, and one way is typically better than the other. First way is when a supervisor decides either that they can't be seen as fair and impartial, or when the supervisor just feels they don't have the temperament, skills, or time to handle the situation well. I am always impressed by these self-aware managers.
Wow, wowie, wowie.
Several years ago, I was hired by a very wise manager. She was a natural mediator, empathic, a good listener, self-aware, creative. Her department had a strategic opportunity that could have meant millions of dollars for the organization. But an internecine squabble erupted between two persons on her team. From skills perspective, the manager would have been really well suited to mediating this. But because of a long and strained history with one of the two employees embroiled in the conflict, she knew she just wasn't the right choice for a mediator. Even her decision to bring me in was actually subject to some skepticism from the party with whom this manager had a somewhat damaged relationship. I actually spent hours with that party answering questions about my role, the confidentiality, and my independence. Winning this person's confidence in me as a straight shooter without any agenda beyond helping the parties work things out took a fair amount of time. But of course, the second way I get called in at times is when a manager makes a failed attempt to mediate on their own, only to become embroiled in the conflict itself.
This was your idea.
That's why self-assessment is an important phase before you try to mediate your employees' conflicts. Now, let's assume in this case you've made the determination that you can be fair and impartial, that you can be seen by the parties as fair and impartial, and that you have the skills and temperament and time to mediate. So now it is time to make it happen. Start by reaching out to the parties to confirm their ongoing willingness to participate in a mediation and to set a time to meet. In that outreach, you might also want to share a bit of information about the process you're going to follow and the role you will take in the mediation. This is information you will surely repeat at the beginning of the mediation, but giving it to the parties in advance allows them a chance to prepare for the session. Some common ground rules you might suggest are: first, giving everyone a chance to speak and share their perspective without interruption. Second, asking everyone to speak from their own experience and to avoid personal attacks. Third, a commitment to full participation the entire time. And fourth, striving to listen and understand. You should also be sure to discuss your own role as a mediator, especially since your employees might often think of you as the decider-in-chief and not as the mediator. So you might say that you're hoping to help the parties work through their differences with each other so that they can find a way to work more collaboratively and so that they can have protocols in place to handle their differences in the future.
Can you do this?
Depending on the context, you should be clear about whether the mediation is to remain confidential. Confidentiality is typically part of a mediation process, although in some workplace mediations, this may not be easy or possible to do. What's most important is that expectations are aligned.
I've got big expectations, Moans-wise.
Because you're a boss, you might emphasize that reaching an agreement is not a requirement, but that if an agreement is reached, it's important that parties actually follow through. The idea here is to avoid one or both parties feeling pressured to reach an agreement only to completely ignore it once they are out of your presence. Also, tell the parties that they can ask for a private conference if they think that would be helpful at any point in the mediation. And be sure to let them know that you may ask for a private conference as well. Make it clear that if you have a private conference with one party, that you'll always give the other party an equal chance to have a private conference with you as well. It's important to talk about these conferences up front so that if you do ask for one, no one thinks it's a sign that something has gotten wrong or that you are in some way in cahoots with the other side. By stating these expectations up front, you make clear that private caucusing is a normal part of a process. That way, when you or someone else asks for one, it's not a signal that something has gone wrong.
No! God, please, no! No! No!
Finally, let the parties know that it's totally fine to ask for a break if it would help them gather their thoughts or to lower the temperature in the room.
Me, or is it like hotter than hell in here?
Before moving into the meat or the substance of the mediation, ask the parties if they understand the ground rules and what questions they have about them. You'll then explain how the mediation will unfold. This might start by inviting each party to share their perspective without interruption and to share what is most important to them coming out of the mediation. Then, once parties have shared their perspective and their interests, you would ask them to brainstorm together, without any commitment, ways they might move forward to meet those interests. Part of your role as a mediator will likely to be reframing some of their positional statements or demands into the language of interests. So for example, they might say, I just don't want to work on Saturdays anymore given my seniority. A reframe to a more generalizable interest would be something like, to have more flexibility on Saturdays that is commensurate with your level of seniority. Or if they say, there is no way I am ever going to work on this dangerous and unsafe new product, you might reframe that as, avoid working on products that are deemed dangerous or unsafe. This might seem like wordsmithing, but for the brainstorming to work, we need to get beyond bottom line positions or demands and move into a conversation about deeper interests. That is what creates the space for creativity. Once this work is done, the parties would be invited to a period of brainstorming some of the ways to meet these various interests. During this stage, make it clear that what's being brainstormed does not mean they are committing to anything. You want to avoid evaluations that are either positive or negative. In many brainstorming sessions I've been a part of, folks are actually pretty good about avoiding negative evaluation. They don't say to me, for example, that idea would never work, Bob. But they tend to engage in positive evaluation. They'll say something like,
Where did you come from?
You're amazing.
That is incredible.
once you feel there's some good ideas generated, it's time to go back and ask the parties' reactions, asking them how well the various ideas meet their interests. To the degree possible, try to have parties talking more to each other than to you.
Leave me out of it.
Ultimately, if these employees are colleagues, they're going to need to find a way to work with each other without you coaching them constantly. Your main role here is to actively listen, try to reframe positional statements back to interests, and keep the parties as constructive as possible. During this phase, parties should be moving towards some kind of agreement that actually is workable for all of them. Now, it's tempting once the parties say they are done to congratulate them and move on, but I might caution you against doing this. Instead, I'd go through each of the interests that the parties articulated earlier and ask whether the agreement actually meets those interests. And it's easy in the throes of an intense mediation to forget something and then regret it later. A mediator can slow things down and make sure that the agreement is doing the work it will need to do in the future. Second, check with the parties to see if either or both would like to write the agreement out. Sometimes writing things out can be a wise move because the process of doing the writing can reveal that there hasn't really been the meeting of the minds that you thought there was. Sometimes, though, writing things out can feel formalistic in a way that actually dampens some of the relational goodwill that the parties might have formed. Once the details of an agreement have been worked out, however, I'd encourage one last step. Setting up a time when you will meet with each of the parties, both individually and together, to check on implementation, because it normalizes the idea of a follow-up and a check-in. Plus, it incentivizes the parties to really follow through on any commitments they make. And speaking of difficult conversations, I have a video of how to have that difficult conversation with your boss. If you want to learn more about mediation and negotiation, check out the courses I offer through the Cambridge Negotiation Institute. And, of course, keep watching here for more on mediation and negotiation. Thanks for hanging out. I'm Bob Bordone, and let's keep mediating together. I know you need to have that difficult conversation with your boss, so here's how to do it.